What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a minute since I released a video, a lot going on, so I just haven't been able to release any videos or film any new videos. I did actually have a couple filmed that I still want to get out, so I need to do that. I would do a horror related video, and not just any horror related video. So I thought it would be good to do a little breakdown on the original 1978 John Carpenter film, Halloween, especially with the lead up to the new film coming out, and just break it down, discuss all the brilliance that film had to offer, but not only that, also talk about the consistencies within the first film and also within Michael Myers throughout all of the other films, because as we know, there was a lot of inconsistencies with this character, with this franchise as it sort of went on, but there are a few things that stayed the same, and for those that haven't watched it, this will be a good sort of breakdown for you guys, but also for the fans as well who just love Michael Myers as much as I do. But enough of me talking. I want you guys to grab your snacks, grab your coffee, grab your tea, and when we come back we will be talking about the original 1978 Halloween. As we know, this is a story that has been told and retold so many times. There's been so many remakes, but we know it's set in Haddonfield, Illinois, when Michael Myers first killed his family in 1968, and then he got sent off to a psychiatric sort of ward or whatever it was, and then later on he escapes, and then we're set in the 70s where he escapes, and it's all about the night he came home, and he goes back to his original house, as we know, and he stalks, well, I say stalks Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, and her friends, who are just typical teenagers. She's a babysitter, her friends are babysitters, and he stalks them and is after them throughout the whole film, and he's basically terrorizing Haddonfield once again. Of all iconic horror franchises, none are quite as quirky and as brilliant as Halloween, the original Halloween, was, but as we know, this was the only one in the franchise that was actually directed and created by John Carpenter. He didn't work on any of the other ones. He helped, I think, co-write the second one, but he just left the franchise, and for good reason, because it just went downhill from there. Although Halloween H2O and the more recent Halloween are two that I actually like as well. I think what works in the original Halloween is because it was just simple. It was a story which has been told for many decades before. You know, killer comes home to his hometown, stalks the people there and kills. But also I think it's just because it was simple and low budget that makes it creepy. They weren't working with high budgets, high CGI, things like that. It was just very much a man in a mask stalking some babysitters, and just the way it was filmed with that old sort of feel of the camera, the shots that they did, just everything about it made it feel really creepy, and I think that's what made Halloween what it was. It wasn't over the top, it wasn't this big budget that you get in some horror films nowadays that makes you really just lose that sense of creepiness that Halloween had to offer. So if you're a fan of Michael Myers, you have come to the right place, because now I'll be getting into a little bit of the breakdown. So as we know, as I mentioned at the start, Michael Myers kills his family, then he gets sent to a psychiatric ward, and then he comes back out to now stalk Laurie and her friends. But as he does this, we sort of find out that there are rules in the horror game. For example, all her friends are having sex, they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing as teenagers, and they're basically getting killed for it, and we see shot after shot gruesome kills by Michael Myers, but we also see him stalking Laurie sort of throughout the day and through different scenes. So outside her house, he's hiding behind a bush, Then we get him going to a school where she picks up the little kid that she's babysitting. So she's getting really freaked out. But Michael Myers is everywhere. That's the point. Michael Myers is everywhere. And what we get from Laurie as a character is basically she was too smart for the boys. She was not the one that was typically the girl that the guys dated. She was too smart for them. She dressed very reserved and modest, unlike her friends who were just typical sort of teenage girls with the way that they dressed. Also the fact that they had all slept with their boyfriends and Laurie hadn't. So that kind of gave her an advantage in the horror game. In other words, she embodied the kind of virtue that would allow her to essentially survive in the horror genre. She was, I guess, almost one of the first final girls because she came up against Michael Myers and had to escape him and not only save herself but save the two kids that she was babysitting, whereas her friends obviously didn't survive, as we all know from watching the film. Alongside Laurie and obviously Michael Myers, who was originally called The Shape, there is another main character in this that we don't often focus on, and that is Dr. Loomis, who is Michael Myers' therapist when he was at the psychiatric ward growing up. So he basically studied Michael Myers, studied how he thought, how a serial killer would think, and obviously tried to really get in his head. And what we learn from him is that Michael Myers is just pure evil. There's nothing human about him. He is just evil, and he will not stop until he kills everyone that he wants to kill. Basically, there's nothing there. Like, if you look at him, if you look into his eyes, there's nothing there. It's just empty. It's just almost like he has no soul, and he's just out to kill. And that is what Dr. Loomis tries to warn everyone, and tries to warn Laurie Strode, and obviously help her when Michael Myers is trying to kill her, because he knows how Michael Myers' brain works, unlike anyone else. And I think he's a key component in the film, because we see him throughout the film trying to track down Michael Myers' every move, and try and really figure out what his next move is going to be. And then at the end, when we see Michael Myers, the most epic sort of horror movie, I guess, ending, where Michael Myers is in the house with Laurie Strode, and she's there with the kids, and she's trying to obviously protect the kids. And then we see her trying to escape Michael Myers, essentially, with the famous closet scene, as we all know. We see Dr. Loomis come and shoot Michael Myers, and he falls over the balcony. But as we know, that doesn't actually kill Michael Myers, because we're starting to figure out that is he supernatural, because he just doesn't die. And we see that in the other films, that he just doesn't die. Even when Dr. Loomis shoots him, you would think if Michael Myers was just a man, depending obviously where he shot him, but also the way he fell from such a high balcony, surely he would have died. But no, this is where Dr. Loomis is trying to make the point that Michael Myers is supernatural. He's not human. Nothing about him is human. And obviously, if we look at Michael Myers himself, played by Nick Castle in the original film, he is often cast as too unbelievable to be real type of character, because like I said, he was a human. We saw him as a kid, we saw him kill his family as a kid, and now he's this big unstoppable monster that can't be killed, even though in later films he keeps getting killed, but he keeps coming back. It's almost like you just can't kill him. So is there something supernatural about him? And we kind of learn later on in films that there is, but that kind of got scrapped when we got the new Halloween film, which I'm glad, because I did not like that storyline. But there's almost a sense of you'll never be able to escape this character, and he'll always keep coming back and coming back. So it's not like in Scream, where we know that Billy Loomis and Stu were the killers and they got killed and now they're dead, because they're just two regular kids or teenagers. With Michael Myers, there is something there that's evil, and Nick Castle, although no words were spoken by Michael Myers, Nick Castle plays a great Michael Myers in the way that he walks, his movements, just the way he sort of tilts his head in certain shots, we know that he played this character brilliantly, and Michael Myers is a character that will always go down in movie history as one of the best horror movie villains around. Sorry guys if the shot looks a little bit different, I had to change my battery, but now I'm back. I didn't want it to die, and I didn't want to carry on talking and realise that there was nothing filming, so I'm back. Now I'm going to talk about the rules of Halloween, the rules of Michael Myers, and the consistency of the films and the franchise, because like I said, there is a lot of inconsistencies in Halloween. From, as we know later on, Michael Myers is related to Laurie Strode, which that was not supposed to be the original premise, and that kind of got scrapped as well, and kind of confused audiences, the fact that he was related to her and that she was adopted into a new family, so she was meant to be the baby in the original film, that we see him sort of leave alone as he's killing the rest of his family. But as we know, that kind of got put to the side, which I'm glad, and Laurie was just basically just some random girl that he was stalking, so that's kind of where that went. But there are a few consistencies which make Halloween just the perfect horror movie franchise, and what make Michael Myers the best villain, and I'm going to get into that now. So consistency is that Michael Myers always wears his mask. We rarely ever see him without his mask. He's always got that white mask that we obviously associate with the character. The only times we see him without it is at the beginning of Halloween, where he's obviously a child, and even then he's wearing a mask, but then we see his parents or whoever take it off. And throughout the franchise as well, there is points where we see him without a mask, but that's very rare. And he's always just wearing that, and also he never speaks. That is one thing that is consistent. He never talks. Other horror movie villains we know talk, we know don't always wear masks. We see them without their masks, like in Scream, but Michael Myers just is that character that just never talks, and that's what makes him really creepy, and that's what makes him mysterious, and we don't know anything about him. We don't know what is going on behind the mask, other than the fact that we know he's a killer. But I think that's what I like about him. He doesn't run and chase his victims, he doesn't use a gun, and he doesn't talk, so that's what makes him creepy, and that's what I like. Another consistency is that Michael Myers is continuously referred to as the Shape or the boogeyman in the films, because as we know in the original films, that is what the character was credited as in the script. He was credited as the Shape by John Carpenter, and that kind of stuck with the character, and I think it's because he's just that. He's not human. We don't know what he is. He is just a shape that walks and that is alive and that kills people. So that's the best way to describe him, because he is just, he's not human. He's just pure evil, and that basically describes him perfectly. And also the boogeyman, because he's this character that people would pass down through generations of, be careful of him, because he's this bad guy who kills people, and he killed his family. And especially in Haddonfield, he's kind of this story that everyone knows about but may not have seen or ever come into contact with him, but they all know about him because he is the boogeyman, and it's a way for them to teach younger generations about him and to stay away from him without trying to scare them too much. And he's that type of character, and that kind of stayed consistently within the franchise. Consistency is Michael Myers is obsessed with Laurie Strode and people closest to her. We know this from the first film leading up until the last film, and that's sort of explained later in the second film and the rest of them, that there's that connection there between Laurie and Michael Myers, and that is a reason why he's obsessed with her, and that he stalks her, and that anyone that comes into contact with her he will kill. So there is that consistency that we know he doesn't just go after new people, and it's kind of like that in other horror films where you have the final girl and you get the killer continuously follow or stalk her. In later films, whether it's the same killer or different killers, we know that in Scream, We have Sydney Prescott, who is the final girl, and she gets stalked by Ghostface throughout the films, but Ghostface is always different in each film, whereas this one, we know Michael Myers stays the same, although there's a different person playing him behind the mask, but we know the character itself stays the same. And also, as we know, and I kind of touched upon this already, Michael Myers does not run, he walks. He walks so slow, it's almost like he's taking a nice little walk towards his victims, but somehow he always manages to catch up. Like, the victim can be running so fast, running as far away from him as possible. You'll see him here, the victim all the way over here, but somehow he's just strolling along, but he catches up to the victims every single time, and I don't know how, but he just does. And that's probably where that supernatural element came from. The fact that he's always one step ahead of everyone, even though they're running away from him, and he's just there like, take my time, I'm not gonna rush, and I'm gonna catch up to you eventually, so I may as well just walk. But there's that creepy aspect, like I said, of Michael Myers, is the fact that he just walks but manages to catch up to his victims, which is very, very... And another consistency that I sort of mentioned at the start was Michael Myers cannot be killed. So despite throughout the franchise, all of the stabbings, the gunshots, the chopping his head off, he just can't be killed. And every time we think that he is, or that he might be dead, he always comes back in another film later on, and there's always a explanation as to why he survived. So I think it was it H2O, where he gets killed and he gets pinned up against a tree, or whatever it was, and then we get the explanation that actually it was a different person behind the mask, and that it wasn't actually Michael Myers, so that's how he survived. So although that one is not him getting killed and him surviving, it's more so it wasn't him, even though the audience thought it was him. So that's kind of a loophole that they tried to get out of, but it was more the fact that they just wanted to carry on with the films, and not because Michael Myers actually can't die. It's just ways for them to carry on with the franchise and carry on with Michael Myers. So they kind of brought this consistency into it that he can't be killed, and these explanations as to why throughout each film. Now that we've sort of broken down the film and talked about the consistencies of the film, I'll just give a quick little review on what I thought of Halloween. And for me, like I said, Halloween is one of the greatest horror films ever to be created. I am a huge fan. I saw it originally when I was young, and it freaked me out. Like I said, from everything of the way it was shot, the low budget, the mask that Michael Myers has, the fact that he doesn't talk, and that he's this very simple character but so scary, is what makes him such a great villain. I wasn't a huge fan of later films. I kind of didn't like anything past the second film, to be honest, other than the 2018 reboot of the film, and obviously I'm looking forward to the new one coming out. But Halloween is just pure genius for me, and it kicked off some of the greatest horror films and slasher films that we have. It's a film that's been copied so many times, and another one of my favourite horror films, which is Scream, takes inspiration a lot from Halloween, because I know Kevin Williamson is a huge fan of the film and Michael Myers as a character, and you can see those similarities between that, and obviously Scream is another one of my favourites. So of course Halloween is going to be up there for me, and no horror film will ever top that for me. Michael Myers is the greatest horror movie villain, along with Ghostface, Billy Loomis and Stu, that will ever grace our cinema and TV screens. But I would love to know your thoughts. What do you think of the original Halloween? What do you think about the other ones in the franchise? Do you think they were good? Do you not like them as much? What do you think of Michael Myers as a character? And also, is there any other consistencies or even inconsistencies that you know of in the film? So I'd love to know your thoughts. If you are a Michael Myers fan and a Halloween fan, then comment below, put a little pumpkin in the comments to let me know that you are a fan. But yeah, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Mwah.